Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the GW Basketball Insiders podcast. David Korn looks a little different and he's duplicated. Just David is in Costa Rica, so we've got Scott Greaney and Abe Rothstein of WRGW to talk about the Crown. And they were out in Las Vegas broadcasting the game for WRGW. So obviously GW sustained a shellacking, a 30-point loss to Boise State. So why don't we just lead it off with kind of your thoughts on the Crown experience, the game, just give us your thoughts on what you guys made of it.
Yeah, I think overall it was a phenomenal experience, and they did a really wonderful job of putting it together. I know Coach Caputo talked about in his press conference. Also, Leon Rice, the head coach of Boise State, talked about in the press conference. They said, quote, both said what a first-class experience it's been. The hotels were covered, transportation was covered. They, had these conference rooms all booked out for the teams, and in a very nice facility too. So I do think that this is going to be a thing that schools are going to turn down the NIT because you have to pay for the home games at the NIT, pay for the staff and everything. You're going to have a chance to come to the Crown on Fox Sports National TV. I know we can have that argument about Fox Sports 1 and Fox whatever being national, but all the teams really enjoyed, the experience and being able to travel together. But the game itself, of course, for GW, up until halftime, halftime a little after, Coach kept talking about the first 25 minutes of the game in his press conference. It was close. GW cut the lead to 3 in the second half, and then after he subbed out Rafael Castro, and without Sean Hansen making the trip, they didn't have a true backup center, and the lack of rebounding really came to hurt GW. But overall, great first 25 minutes, but then you take a look at the players who are in the transfer portal. Jacoy Hutchinson was a minus 38. Darren Buchanan was a minus 32. Dion Nessa, I don't remember his plus minus. He was pretty bad.
14.
So I asked Coach in the press conference, I'll leave my tangent at this. I said, I was wondering if, any of the players being in the transfer portal, if you thought that, that impacted their game. And they said, well, they all played pretty terribly.
That's what he said. I mean, yeah. He's right. Yeah, there was I think it was the beginning of the game was kind of maybe going the way that it was obviously going well for GW. They were leading a few times. It was a pretty slow start, I think, for both teams. The defense clearly traveled. Honestly, it was hard to watch at the beginning of the game. It was terrible basketball. Lots of turnovers from both teams, missed shots. I think there was one point where the teams were a combined 1 for 11 from 3. So, and then, but it seems like Boise State sort of woke up a little bit. Maybe water found its level in terms of Boise State just being a better team than GW. So, but yeah, a big thing for me was turnovers. It's not just the amount. They had 22 turnovers. It wasn't just the number of turnovers. It was just the nature of some of these turnovers were just horrendous. Just throwing the ball out of bounds, super, super careless. So, and then Boise State got out in transition a lot because of the silly GW turnovers. So, Scott, what did you make of it? Anything else that you have to add?
I think especially in the first half, I'm just looking at the box score right now. At the under 8, you only have Tyson Degenhart taking 1 shot. So I think that is also a little bit attributed to, GW's early success. I think they were able to make him more of a facilitator, trying to find those backdoor cuts a lot more. And then, with Christian Jones, especially in a little bit of foul trouble right there. And then just obviously the general shooting struggles as well. The rust started to come off a little bit for, Tyson Degenhart, and then Boise State as a team. 9 guys, at one point, before garbage time, every single Boise State player to have touched the court had scored. So obviously, I think it was just a showcase of just the two pictures of where the two programs are. I mean, Boise State only has 1 guy in the transfer portal right now. And,
2.
He wasn't playing 2. Is it 2 now? I think.
Yeah, but neither of them played.
Yeah. So it's,
yeah,
you're getting your bottom bench guys for Boise State in the transfer portal, but you look at GW, they've got 3-4 key guys, in the transfer portal, and we talked about, their struggles. So I think it's just, and everyone leading up to the tournament was talking about how, Boise State, an NCAA tournament quality team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I think that really got showcased today. But it was, I think, as we were saying on the call, it was an ugly season to a relatively successful turnaround for GW this year.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, obviously this season was a step in the right direction for GW. But this is about as sour of a taste as you can kind of have in your mouth towards the end of the year, especially if you add the George Mason game onto it. Another game where GW was, I believe, they were winning at halftime in the George Mason game, right?
Yep.
And then they just completely fell apart. And then kind of similar story in the Crown. I'm sure there are people that would have qualms about, oh, well, does this mean you're pushing back the offseason and this and that and whatever? I don't necessarily think that. I think they're still kind of able to be pretty active in the portal and all that different stuff. But yeah, they pulled it against Boise State. They pulled it within 3, around 14 minutes left, and then just completely fell apart. Just like, and I think after, maybe that little mini run where they pulled it within 3 and then Boise State pulled back ahead to a larger lead, I think their guys just gave up. I think they were just like, whatever. Like, it's just, that's fine. So.
And you can't criticize coaches' use of timeouts because he called them 3 separate times looking to stop a run, looking to stop momentum. One of the big parts that changed, Christian Jones was actually +8 in the game, but he was in foul trouble, picked up his 4th foul pretty early in the second half. They did take him out, and they put Jacoy in. Jacoy's been a pretty solid player, in the second half of this season, I should say. Last year, he was a very good player, had brutal struggles the first half this year, but the -38, I might have been one of the worst performances I've watched from a GW player in my time here.
Yeah, it's always kind of, you always need to be careful looking at single game plus minus, but -38 tells you a story that he was really, really bad. He had 6 turnovers. I'm going to be honest, why a lot of the guys that were in the portal, I mean, I guess it's only 3 of them, why they played so much, especially down the stretch, is entirely unclear to me, and something that I took issue with. I understand that there was the Christian Jones foul trouble, but it doesn't make any sense to me. I guess unless you're trying to avoid injury or something, but it's like, these guys who aren't going to be with the team next year shouldn't be on the floor, especially when it's clear that, you're not going to win this game, and in theory, you should be kind of building towards next year. So that was something that I really was not a fan of at all. And I thought was frankly poor decision-making from the coaching staff, but I'm sure they had their reasons for it, but that's how it goes.
Well, none of the players did themselves any favors. I can tell you that. They didn't help out their standing.
And that's the thing is part of the reason, or part of the, I guess one of the selling points for this tournament was, we're going to be on TV, on national TV. And I do think Fox Sports 1 counts as national TV. CBS Sports Network does not. That's my distinction. That's my line in the sand. Is we're going to be on national TV while the transfer portal is open. We're going to be the only game on. And that was true. But when you go out there and, get outscored by 24 points in the second half and lose by 30, that you don't want to be on TV. You don't want to be showcasing your, we can go showcase, my skills for the potential transfer portal suitors. Not when you're -32 or -38. I think a lot of these teams have the kind of realize that they're going to be they'll be able to overlook this, but I'll bet there's a team or two that was like, oh, maybe we're interested in Jacoy Hutchinson. Maybe we're interested in Darren Buchanan. And they watched it and they played the crap. And they're like, well, maybe we'll look elsewhere. So, but David pointed this out in the last podcast that he was impressed that he said he thought it said a lot that Caputo kind of allowed some of these guys to play. And I do think that says something about the culture of the team. So definitely something to be said for that. I mean, if we can maybe move away from piling on a little bit here, I thought Ty Bevins was really good. I thought Ty Bevins was good, and I thought Trey Autry was pretty good. And that was kind of one of those things that I was talking about. Okay, it becomes clear that you're looking towards next year. You get that good performance from Ty Evans. So, I mean, you guys were there. Here I am taking up all the airtime. What did you guys think about it?
Scott, all you, because I know you were raving about Ty Evans yesterday in the flight.
I think he was really, besides Trey Autry, obviously, I think he was the one who shocked me the most. I think he had an actual game where you can look at that highlight film and say, look, this is a guy that we can look for coming off the bench, maybe as a sixth man. He's 6'5", gives a lot of size. We've really seen him develop his defensive role throughout the season. 4 of 8, 11 points, 3 3-pointers, all coming from the corner. While battling that ridiculous Utah fan with the miraculous scream that got some national attention. I think he really used his time well, just over 21 minutes. I think, as you said, looking forward to the future, I think he's going to be a really interesting piece for GW to see. This guy, Coach Caputo was saying in the press conference, this guy's 18. He loves basketball. And that's exactly the kind of guys that you want to bring in here. Basketball driven, really good team guys that can really build up, their games as well. I think one area where he could improve a little bit is obviously attacking the rim a little bit. Seems like, I feel, not necessarily in the Vegas game, but a few other games during the regular season, there were a few chances where he had a few fast break opportunities that he dribbled back out. So I'd like to see a little bit more confidence heading to the rim for him. But I think, him and then definitely Trey Autry as well. He's having a career year, really a big bright spot for GW. I think those two players definitely had, at least positive takeaways from a 30-point blowout.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure this is Ty Evans' career high, if I remember correctly. He was one, him and Trey Autry seemed like the two players that really seemed, that they were fully invested in the game. Ty hit a few corner threes and then turned around and actually started jawing at that Utah fan who was sitting courtside. The Utah fan was jawing at the GW players all game. Which, I mean, you know what? This would have been Ryan Palaio's big chance for national TV.
So I was wondering, why did the Utah fan start rooting against GW? Did he just pick a team to root for or root against?
I'm going to assume he had money in the game.
Oh,
but that's just my guess. I don't know. But also, Trey Autry during the game, or at one point, he wound up screaming at the GW bench, like, something along the lines of, "Come on, let's get going." Of course, use those words, but he was fired up. And one thing also he said in the post-game press conference, asked him about next year. He took the box score, put it in hand, and went down the page and was like sophomore, freshman, sophomore, and was basically talking about the guys who are going to be there for next year. So that pretty much all but confirmed, at least for us, that Trey Autry will be back. Pretty comfortable in saying Ty Evans and Christian Jones will likely be back. I know they're trying to work on bringing Rafael Castro back. Fingers are crossed on that, but they're working on the portal. Had some calls and getting underway. So even though they've been in Vegas, they were still working on the portal. So that didn't put any. Want to make that very clear. That didn't put any problems into their portal planning.
Yeah, and Caputo was pretty clear about that from the beginning, that he thought they could do both at the same time. So, I mean, Trey Autry might be coming back. We're probably never going to hear the end of the Syracuse fans who are convinced that he's going to come and, play for his dad. I just think it's never going to happen. The only way it's going to happen is if Adrian Autry gets fired, which may happen next year. So that's neither here nor there. Sean Hansen was in Japan, which kind of is unfortunate. So we could have used him, but I guess that's how it goes. Pre-planned family vacation. That's how it goes.
No one thought we'd be playing this late in the year.
Yeah, I mean, I told David in the last episode, I did have to cancel my tickets to San Antonio, but that's how it goes. Yeah, I mean, do you guys have anything else on the on this game? I mean, my kind of general takeaway is, I know I've been pretty negative here, but I was rather frustrated by especially the second half performance. This year was definitely a big step forward. It's just an embarrassing way to end the season, getting 30 balled in a made up tournament in front of like 10 fans in Las Vegas. But, at least they're playing in the postseason. So you just got to build on it for next year.
Yeah, it was a really cool thing that they did. I know Kevin, even a lot of the coaches were saying that it felt like an MTE. Kind of, it was as as well put together and as well done as a lot of the MTEs. And also, just kind of on that note a little bit, if you look at the future of MTEs, there might not be many more for the mid-major schools. I know we're playing the Cayman Islands next year, but if you look at the future of kind of how MTEs are going, the mid-major schools might not have those. I know Maui's different. I know Myrtle Beach is going to be different. I don't know the players. Was it the players era or the players own whatever?
Player era, yeah.
The player era, which is in Vegas, which is very similar to kind of how the Crown was run. I think it's going to be one of the main ones, but the future of MTEs for mid-major schools are up in the air for sure.
Yeah, as is the case for a lot of things. So I hope you guys were able to have some fun in Vegas too. Maybe drown your sorrows after the big GW loss.
Sure, that's we'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that. Okay, fair enough. Why don't we move on to the portal a little bit there? David and I touched on a bunch of the four guys who have already entered the portal. There haven't been any more portal entrants since then. I mean, the big question in terms of kind of guys that may or may not enter the portal is Rafael Castro. He tweeted the thinking bubble emojis yesterday, which I don't know who knows what that means. But I mean, kind of what's your read on that? The sense I get is that he'll probably stay unless he gets like a big offer from a big school. But who knows? Like this is nature of the transfer portal. That could change by tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I personally feel, I mean, I don't know I'm not saying this. Not on the back of anything. I don't know anything for sure. I do feel that it's more likely than not that he stays, and kind of along the sentiment you said. I know that they're working on, putting together whatever package or, however that might look like for Rafael Castro. But I do think, and I do have the gut feeling that he's more likely than not to stay. Not saying that he won't enter the portal, but I just do feel like it's more likely than not. And also, there are a few guys that haven't said anything. Like, for example, I feel like Trey Moss might wind up testing the waters once again. Of course, his role really diminished this year. Never fully was able to recover from that ankle injury that he suffered earlier on. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Trey Moss enter as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. The thing about Trey Moss is this will be his fourth school in 5 years if he enters the portal. So I don't know if that would be – it would probably be easier for him to find another place to go if that's a grad year rather than him being a fifth-year senior, just because of how it works with the logistics of admissions at some of these places. But, I mean, that may not necessarily inform his decision at all. It's just a thing. So that's the other guy that I also kind of had that may or may not enter, but who knows? And then I guess the next question, the thing that a lot of people are curious about, myself included, is like that game ended on Monday night. And I was like, all right, I need good transfer portal news, and I need it before, the sun rises tomorrow morning. Is incoming players. So, I mean, what do we think the holes are that they need to fill? And I don't know. How do you see the coaching staff going about that?
Scott, you start off.
I think definitely a backup center, similar to Sean Hansen's role a little bit, a guy that you can play at the 4, but also give you that insurance role behind the 5, because, especially there were some games this year where, Rafael Castro, he's not a huge natural blocks guy like Stretch was last year. And, if he gets in foul trouble, he's really got to be limited in his defensive roles that we saw. I think it was against George Mason in the tournament. He battled some foul troubles. So I'd say definitely a backup 4. But then again, you also do have Garrett Johnson coming back. So whether you play him at the 3 or you play him at the 4, that'll be interesting to see. And then I think also getting sort of like a wing guard, almost sort of like the build of a Gerald Drumgoole Jr. a little bit, a guy who can, shoot the ball pretty well. probably like a 38, 40% 3-point shooter, but also has the ability to guard, a top conference guy, let's say like an Xavier Brown of, St. Joseph's, who can really take on that one-on-one matchup on the defensive end. So I'd say a backup 4 and then, a two-way guard, the priorities, just from my standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely thinking they need a legitimate backup point guard this year. I know Jacoy was kind of, a prototypical point guard, but they need a scoring point guard, a guy who can come off the bench and create his own shot. I know that's kind of what they thought they were getting this year with Trey Moss, of course, who averaged 12 points a game at William and Mary the year before. But they need a shot creator, off the bench at that guard role. For example, when you don't have those top guys in, so you need someone to be able to create a shot. They're looking for a point of attack defender, something that the coaches said over and over again. So if that's at the guard position, or also kind of echoing you, Scott, looking for kind of a Drumgoole type of player. I know, Drumgoole last year was 35% from 3 on about 200 attempts. It just did not fully work out in the way that GW had hoped this year. Gerald's a phenomenal guy, great guy to talk to and everything. But he's a really streaky player. Had that one really hot streak towards the end of out of conference, early A10 play, through that Dayton game, and he really cooled down and was unable to find that consistent 3. So definitely looking for that wing who has that consistent shot, and of course a backup setter. Sean was a phenomenal player this year. Pretty much everything you could have hoped for a backup center. The ability to kind of hop, slide into the 4, and something coach even talked about post game at the Crown was, mentioning that, for example, normally when Hanson's playing, Hanson is Castro's backup and Castro is Hanson's backup. So if Castro leaves the game, you slide Hanson to the 5, and if Hanson leaves the game, you put back in Castro. So kind of looking for another player like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Seems like there's maybe, oh my God, I got a cat on my lap here, by the way. So hairy. Seems like power forward is maybe a priority. I've kind of heard whispers that there may be an announcement relatively soon about a power forward addition. I don't know who that's going to be. That may be slowed down a little bit. This is just me hypothesizing and not any info I've heard, but there is a dead period that starts tomorrow, the 3rd, that goes for a week through past the Final Four up to the 10th, which basically just means that players can't come on visits, which may slow things down a little bit. Not that it's not slowing things down for other schools too. But yeah, it seems like they're looking for kind of maybe that big man adjacent player. And then I would say shooting is another big thing. I would like some guys who can come in and shoot really well, especially from the perimeter. So, we'll see.
They're looking for water to find its level at a higher level this year. Or I should say next year. We don't want any low tides like we've had a lot of.
All right. Back after some minor technical difficulties, not as bad as our pre-A10 tournament thing where I had to be completely excluded from the recording because it was so bad. But
we're talking about audio's better than the interviews with that microphone.
Yeah, that was tough. We thought the audio was better than it was, and then we had already recorded so whatever. So Scott, you were talking a little bit about the kind of the prototype of what they should be looking for in a shooter. I believe you alluded to Gibson Jimerson. So can you expand upon that a little bit, just in terms of what GW should be looking for?
Yeah. Just someone who's a pure shooter, doesn't really have that, game to attack the rim necessarily, but someone who can come off the bench as, maybe in that 7th spot off the bench, 8th spot, can give you, let's say 3 3-point attempts a game or something. something like that at a Gibson Jimerson, because we see him going a lot on the perimeter, getting some down screen action to free up those shots as well. And then, if you have that point guard with, Christian Jones, and you're able to have Rafael Castro as well, and you get another shooter coming back with Garrett Johnson, you're going to be able to open that up a lot more. So if you go for a young shooter or a more experienced shooting guard, that'll be interesting to see. I think another thing is obviously the age as well. Caputo's really raved about having a young team and developing those guys. But, we've seen a lot of these top teams, even outside the A10, really going for those more experienced guys who maybe have 1, maybe 2 years of eligibility left. So that's something that I'll be looking forward to as well, whether they're going for, that long-term investment in a guy, or they're going for, a more results now kind of picture.
Yeah, and I mean, I like what you said. Of course, Jimerson is the pinnacle, I guess, of A10 shooters this season. But, something like that, I like the idea of, having that shooter and then drawing up plays. Just like you saw what St. Louis did against GW. They were running every possible action off the ball to free up Gibson Jimerson. So I like the idea of getting a shooter just to have guys who come in and shoot the ball. We don't want to, be bottom 70 in the country again in 3-point shooting or whatever we finished this year. Because you think, there are a bunch of games that if GW were able to make 2 or 3 more threes, their record looks a lot better than it did. Lost a lot of one-possession games.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys briefly froze there for a second. We're really struggling with my Wi-Fi here, but we're getting through it. So in terms of the experience point, on my little transfer tracker thing, which if you are listening to this and would like to check that out, it's pinned to my Twitter profile. GW has, obviously this isn't everything, but it gives you an indication of the type of guys they're looking at. Shown interest in 7 guys with 1 year of eligibility remaining and 15 guys with 2 years of eligibility remaining. And then just 4 with 3 years and none with 4 years remaining. So it looks like they're looking at guys that, have college experience, but also have multiple years of eligibility remaining. So,
and they do have 2 high school recruits coming in too.
That's true.
Don't forget about that.
Yeah. Jalen Rougier-Roan and Vinny Chowdhury, right? Yep. So why don't we move on to the thing that I think we're all itching to talk about, which is GW's most recent head coach before Chris Caputo, Jamion Christian. It has not been officially announced yet, but it has been reported by multiple sources. It's going to happen. Jamion Christian is going to be the next head coach at Bryant University. So why don't I just get your thoughts on that? He was obviously over in Italy coaching Pallacanestro Trieste for the last 2 years.
And Denzel Valentine was on the team this year.
Yeah.
If anyone doesn't know that.
Love it.
Exactly.
So what do you guys think about this? Yeah, what do you think about this hire for Bryant?
To give everything, he did at GW, which frankly did not work out. He was successful. He made the tournament twice in Mount St. Mary's, had a very successful year at Siena before coming to GW. So kind of going back to that level, I think is, gives him a lot more room for success. Being able to bring guys, he's a good recruiter. He can bring people in. That's never been his question. The question is, Rayon Freeman's out there in the portal. Will he join back with Jamion Christian? It's my fun random prediction. But he's a good recruiter. Has the ability to talk. I think the X's and O's are a bit more of where the issues have been as well. Going from Jared Grasso, of course, we know how that went. And then Martelli Jr. left after this year, and then going to Jamion. It'll be interesting to see how he's gonna, build the program there, and to see, the types of players who, are going to come in. Scott, what you thinking?
I think it's similar to what you said. Really good recruiter, and then an interesting, he's had a lot of success as an assistant coach. Very motivational guy. Really loves to, really get the energy up on his team. I think Bryant, obviously coming off a really successful season, that'll be interesting to see how that shakes up there. And I think you look at his recruiting at GW, James Bishop, Joe Bamisil, and, Bryant Freeman, as you said. So, really being able to get, some really talented guys to a school like Bryant that's, obviously coming off, that NCAA tournament appearance, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Something I learned today is that Jamion Christian's brother is the general manager of the Maine Celtics.
Jarrell.
I did not know that. So there
He's
you
the
go.
former head coach before he
Jarrell.
moved to the front office there.
Yeah. So I'm a little surprised Bryant went for him. I'm less surprised that he went for Bryant, although he was having a lot of success in Italy. I think he should have stuck around in Italy. He got them promoted from the second division to the first division and had them in the top half of the first division. But it was clear he wanted to get back into college coaching. And I think Bryant's not a bad fit for him. He's only 42 years old is the other thing. So,
and on his fourth head coaching job.
Yeah, that's true.
Now his fourth collegiate.
Although he was at. Yeah, that's true. How long was he at Mount St. Mary's for? Because he was at Siena for. Oh, he's at there for 6. Oh wow. Okay, that's longer than I thought.
Well, do you know who he took over?
Because
for
I was going to say he took over for Jimmy Patsos, didn't he?
Bingo.
There you go. So yeah, he's shown he can recruit sometimes. I mean, he's recruited James Bishop and Joe Bamisil, and to a lesser extent, Bryant Freeman.
Well, don't forget,
he also recruited Chase Park.
That's true.
I have no idea if Ira Lee was good.
Ira Lee was a big time. He was at Arizona. He was initially a big recruit coming out of high school, of course, then came to GW, transferred there. They scheduled, the California trip for him, and he tore his patella before the season.
Playing pickup basketball. So, that's how it goes. I know we will all be very curious to see how Jamion Christian does. I mean, how awesome would it be if GW releases that schedule next year and it's Bryant coming to the Smith Center? It would never happen, but how awesome would that be?
Well, that'd be something.
I wonder if they do a Taylor on tap giveaway for that game. That would be interesting.
Still waiting to see if I won. 5 entrants in that draft.
I think it might have been a con, Abe. You might have been conned. They gave him all to the grad assistants.
He does wear a suit.
Yeah,
I will give that to him. He does wear a suit.
The suit jacket comes off early.
So we're now in the stage of the podcast where if you're still listening, you need to have your head examined. He wears the suit jacket and takes it off literally after the first play. It's an ode to Shaka Smart, who he used to coach under at VCU. So the practicality of that, I won't speak to that, but you watch him coach, he will start in a suit jacket. After literally the first play, he will take it off and just coach in, shirt and tie.
Well, just talking about, coaches in suits, I do have the Tony Skin bobblehead on my desk.
Tony's whatever.
He does wear a suit.
Whatever.
That's but I blame the Wi-Fi troubles on Tony Skin.
Yeah, me too. I blame the Wi-Fi troubles on my old computer. So someone give me a job so you can give me a new computer. All right. I think do you guys have any more thoughts about, Taylor on tap or the transfer portal or, the crown?
All I'm going to say is I'm really excited to see kind of this offseason for GW. I think this is like the first real offseason in this new landscape where, money is going to be something that's a plus, actually. And the revenue sharing is a plus for GW. All these other schools, a lot of the revenue sharing is going to go to their football programs. GW, men's and women's basketball are at the forefront of sports here. So I'm really excited to see what they're doing. I know that new athletic director, Michael Lippitz, is really looking to kind of transform the athletic department and kind of making it real serious right now. So you can already see some of the changes behind the scenes. I'm sure everyone will hear about those soon. But, I'm really excited to kind of see the future GW basketball. I know Cooper Handelsman's doing a really good job. Had a chance to talk with him in Vegas a lot. He's working hard, and they're doing everything they can to, make it a great program. And last but not least, I'm really excited. Jonquil Jones, graduation speaker.
That's been great.
That's something that's really cool that the athletic department, I think, did. Helps boost the athletic department. She's one of the faces of women's basketball in the world right now. Just won finals MVP for the Liberty. She was in the front of the ticker tape parade down Broadway in New York. She is the pinnacle of GW athletes right now. So it's really exciting. I know a lot of people, want another retread from the Biden White House, but we're going to get a successful alumni this time and someone who's, at the pinnacle of their sport. So it's really cool to see GW bring her back, and I'm really excited to hear her story. I know she has a really great story of coming from the Bahamas and, going under the wing of, or Diane Richardson became her guardian when she was 14. And that's how she got here to GW. So really excited. And Coach G's press conference next Tuesday.
Yeah, the publicity of that hasn't been great, but it's going to be next Tuesday.
Yes. Everyone was traveling. Everyone wanted to be here. I know President Granberg has been in Europe doing some stuff with some big donors and everything. And also, Lippitz has been in Vegas. The coaching staff going to the Final Four. So I want to make sure everyone's back and going all in for her.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are going to be at that press conference?
Oh, yeah. I only have one class on Tuesday. So thank you, GW, for making it on Tuesday.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I think that's about it. I think we'll wrap up here. So thank you guys for coming on. Make sure to check out Scott and Abe on Twitter and whatever other platforms they're on.
LinkedIn is going to help.
LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn. Open to work. Yeah.